Alright, I did manage to find a copy of the service manual. Found out what kind it actually is. It is actually a Pioneer SX-1000TW. After looking quickly at the schematic and such, I've decided that the issue has to be... turn that off before I get busted for copyright or get someone complaining that they can't hear me. The issue has got to be in the head amp unit, because this is like the entire preamp for the tape head section and the phono input. So like I said, the other sections are quiet, so it's got to be in here. And that's the board layout, parts list. Could be fun finding these transistors. I don't know. At least if I know what they are, I can at least look them up. And I'm gonna have to look and see some options here, because it's about even in both, so it'd have to be something common to both channels. So we're gonna check on that. But now I can actually get it apart and start looking at it intelligently. And here we go. Right now you're hearing some Beethoven being supplied by my Laserdisc player, running through my Marantz receiver. What I'm going to do with that, and this is supposedly royalty-free music, so I shouldn't get busted, doing some elimination of stages. I want to make sure everything is functioning properly, although it seems to be working pretty good because I have it set on auxiliary right now, but I want to eliminate everything behind the preamp. This is the preamp circuit. This is the tone control circuit and switching circuits right here. So the preamp comes before the switching circuit, and then this is the main driver section, and then on the top side's the output. What I'm doing here, what you see is kind of a kludge, but I have two 470K resistors and a capacitor to inject the signal into there, which is the volume control. I also have the scope hooked up so I can monitor the output. So I'm going to mute the Marantz and try to do this one-handed with my wrong hand, and while looking through the camera. Okay, and now I'm going to flip it to the other channel and do the same. And it's not the cleanest signal in the world, and it won't be. I'm holding a capacitor, so you're going to pick up some from my hands, and if it gets quiet enough, you can actually hear the local 5,000 watt radio station, which is about half a mile from here, actually being demodulated. So, alright, everything, driver amp, main amp working. So it really is this module. I need to flip this over and start injecting signals into there, see what the issue is, so we can start getting this eliminated and find the problem. Alright, we're working back here again, and after watching Shango 066 work on one of these, not like this, but a 70s, his was a 70s quadraphonic Pioneer, and the problem ended up being in the power supply. I'm going to eliminate that. I've kind of had some suggestions that are making me rethink everything. So I'm checking on the power supply board right here, the voltages. Some of them are listed, some of them are not. The ones I'm mainly concerned with right now, I'm testing to see It's supposed to be 12.5 volts. 12.61 is what I'm getting, and there's not hardly any noise on there, so I'm going to call that good. But the next one I need to check is pin 7 on there, which is the 40 volt supply, because the 40 volt supply is what supplies the driver amp and the tape head unit. Get lost in this thing here. The preamp unit here, and also supplies the driver amp. Now the main amp is supplied by the big 70. The main amp's also supplied by the 40 amp. The 40 volt, not 40 amp, 40 volt power supply, and then the 70 volt just goes right on over and feeds the output transistors. So I'm going to check those voltages, see if there's any noise or nastiness on there, because that can cause issues. So now to switch it over to the 40 volt output and check on that, and then the 70 volt, also check that 35 volt output. I think that feeds the radio circuitry and that kind of stuff. Now when they say control amp unit here, this is the signal switching, not signal switching, that's the tone area. That's where you get your mono stereo, your tone controls, your loudness, cut switches and all that. And then this is your switched function switch coming out of the head amp unit. So this is always going to be my main concern. So I'm going to check that right now and see how that is. So I've got it there. It's pin 7. I'm supposed to be 40 volts. I get a little lower. I get 39.5, but it seems fairly steady. It's auto ranging here. And I switch it over to AC. There's no AC on it. So that's good. And the scope kind of confirms that. I don't have any. That's DC. So now on to the other power supplies. I'm going to check them all just to make sure. Okay, the 35 volt supply, a little low, but it does look good. So now onto the big 70 volt. I expect that to still look good, but it's worth checking. And this is just how I'm tapping it off, each one there. Oh, and again, there's no there we go. No AC on it, so alright. And there's the tapping of the big filter cap for the 70 volt. And so there we go. So it's all good. Alright, now I'm a little more confused. Well, kind of. Actually, I answered a few questions. This unit, the way they route signaling in this thing is interesting. Because you have your normal, selector switch, which, that's that one. And I was probing, this is the input to the preamp board, this tape amp board. And I was trying to figure out why, because on it, there's this in this section. Not where the inputs are, but this looks like this goes to a selector switch, and you have this little watt, a resistor and a capacitor, and then filter networks, and what looks like, kind of an EQ network in a way. And then it goes into here. It goes into the input of the transistor. It goes and gets. I'm sorry, it doesn't go to the input of the transistor. Input of the transistor's here, but this affects the circuit here. It goes into a loop, and then it feeds into that transistor, and there you go to the output. And I was probing the input, and I couldn't figure out why. When I switched to FM, I would get nothing. Well, what it is FM, and the auxiliary tape input do not go through that amplifier. They just go directly into the control amp. And auxiliary has a little bit of noise on it, but only when you crank it past 3/4. That's probably the noise for this amp. It says 80 dB is the 80 dB, so 80 decibel signal to noise ratio is how this thing is rated. So cranking at 3/4 and hearing hiss, yeah, that's normal. FM tuner, I don't know. It seems okay. So that all feeds into here. So what feeds through here? AM tuner, which is right there, and then the phono preamp, the phonograph, both ceramic and magnetic. For ceramic, they just tie some resistors to it to knock the level down, and it's on input 2. And then the tape head input, but you see the levels here. Ceramic is 51 millivolts, so there is some amplification on there, and magnetic phonos 2.4, or they could be 24. It's hard to tell with these scans. And the tape head input looks to be 1.5 millivolts. Well, that's all well and good. I still get the noise. It's still there. So I'm going to ask some other questions just to see.